This is a $1 bill. It has the face of our first president, the presidential seal, this weird pyramid looking thing, and compared to a dollar from 100 years ago, it's worth about 4 cents. I bring this up because, as I'm sure you know, inflation throughout the United States and across the world has been crazy lately. Everywhere you go, from retailers to gas stations to grocery stores, prices are so much higher than they used to be. AKA, your dollar is less valuable. At least Costco hot dogs are still $1.50, but you're gonna have to shell another 10 cents if you want to wash it down with a soda. But if you think this is bad, let me tell you about a time money was so useless, kids would play with it as building blocks. A time when an entire wheelbarrow full of cash couldn't buy you a newspaper. A time when inflation was so high that burning bills in your fireplace was seen as cost effective. This is how money became worthless. This is the true story of Germany's Weimar Republic. After losing the First World War, Germany was in a state of crisis. Following the armistice, which ended fighting in 1918, various uprisings and miniature revolutions took place throughout the country. This resulted in the abdication of Kaiser Wilhelm II and Chancellor Max von Baden. After this ousting, various parties and political movements struggled for power, all with their own beliefs as how to govern post-war Germany. And this chaos didn't end until the adoption of the Weimar Constitution in August of 1919. Financially, they were a wreck too. Unlike other countries such as France, which raised taxes to pay for the war, Germany paid for the war with loans from foreign banks. No problem, they thought. Once we win the war, we'll just make the loser pay all the money we owe back to us, which, as we all know, went according to plan. It was also around this time that Germany removed the mark from the gold standard, meaning that their currency was literally backed by thin air. At the beginning of the war, one American dollar was worth about 4 German Reichsmarks. And by the end, that number had more than doubled to 9. However, the worst was yet to come. On June 28, 1919, Germany was forced to sign the Treaty of Versailles, which stated the conditions for peace with the Allies. In the treaty was a war guilt clause, blaming the Germans for the entire thing, seizing control of their overseas colonies, limiting their army to no more than 100,000 men, and most importantly, for this video at least, making them pay war reparations totaling over $400 billion in today's money. Side note, the real number that the Allies expected them to pay was closer to $50 billion, and the other number was mainly for publicity. But still, this is a war-torn nation with a whole slew of economic problems before this. Of course, all of this was done to properly punish the Germans for what they had done, and make sure that they would never try anything like this again, which, as we all know, went well. At first, Germany sent gold bars to these countries, but later thought, hey, what if we skip the trouble of actual gold and just send our paper mark, which will make sure to gold back? That works fine for a couple years, but then Germany has a new idea. Hey, how are they gonna know this money is gold backed? What if we just send them some paper that's backed by literally nothing? Which is ultimately what they decided to do. As Germany began printing money to pay for reparations, the German mark steadily declined in value. And by July of 1919, a dollar was worth 14 Reichsmark. At this point, German economists knew there was a problem, but it's gonna be okay. We'll just print even more money to keep it with devaluing currency. Of course, this was a downward spiral because as they printed more money to keep it with devaluing currency, the money became more devalued, meaning that even more money was needed to be printed. By January of 1920, a dollar was equal to 65 marks. And by January of 1922, a dollar was worth 190 marks. 6 months later, it reached 460 marks. By the start of 1923, a single American dollar was worth more than 8,000 Reichsmarks. And Germany was no longer capable of paying their war reparations. On the 9th of January, French and Belgian troops occupied the Ruhr district of Germany with the intent of using these resources to make up for the lack of reparations. German workers were having none of this though, and with the help of the government, went on strike. The economic impact of this strike was tremendous. First off, this caused a severe lack of goods throughout Germany, making the products available skyrocket in cost. And secondly, the government had to print even more money to pay for the workers' salaries. By August of 1923, the strikers returned to their job. However, at this point, one American dollar was worth more than 4.5 million marks. Inflation was rising so quickly that by the time the workers would get paid twice a month, their salary would be worth close to nothing. They eventually got changed so that they get paid once a week, and then once a day, and in the worst of it, every single hour. There are many accounts of workers rushing out of the factory every hour and handing the money to their wives waiting outside, who would quickly race to the store to buy as much as they could before it would be worthless. Soon most stores stopped even accepting cash, and instead would do exchanges with goods. But the government kept on printing, and inflation kept on rising. Politicians didn't care because at the beginning of this, they signed legislation, so every time the money was devalued, they get a raise to compensate for it. Which honestly might be the most politician thing that I've ever heard. In August of 1923, one American dollar was worth 4.6 million marks. In September, 100 million. And in October, 1 billion. At its peak in November of 1923, it reached a staggering 4.2 trillion. Hyperinflation completely obliterated the middle class of Germany. Those with decades worth of savings saw them wiped out overnight. While on the other side of that, those with large loan payments suddenly owed close to nothing. This of course caused a great deal of resentment between lender and creditor. Hyperinflation caused political instability and made extreme movements such as fascism a more viable option. Because if this is what democracy is, it certainly isn't working. Related to that, many struggling Germans blame the Jewish people for their problems, which would be used to the advantage of Hitler in the years to come. Overall, the mismanagement of hyperinflation is one of the main reasons as to why the Weimar Republic failed, and why the Nazi Party rose to power. While I don't think the inflation happening in the United States right now is even on the playing field of the Weimar Republic, there are still many lessons that we can take away from this, so we don't make the same mistakes in the future. This takes me back to the dollar bill. What if you found out one day that this was worthless? How would your life be different? This is how money becomes worthless. This is a true story of Germany's Weimar Republic.